Thank you very much, and Diego, thank you very much for the very kind introduction. I'm very, very happy to be here this evening and speaking about this topic. I met with a few of you before we began the evening, but I'd like to learn more about the people who are here in the room and the kind of backgrounds, the kind of companies you're with. Let me begin by asking how many people here are working in the technology, but the hardware or software industry. We have about 6 people here from technology. Are you software companies or? No?
Hardware.
Hardware. What kind of hardware?
Air conditioning.
Air conditioning.
Software as a service.
Software as a service.
Crowdsourced, app-based.
Okay.
Automotive.
Automotive. How many are in are in manufacturing industries?
Can I be in both?
Sure. Especially these days.
Yes.
And we have people here from professional services organizations as well. That's right. And I'm probably leaving at financial services. You're in finance. Okay.
Renewables.
Renewables. Very good. Okay, thank you very much. So gives you an idea of, with your backgrounds about, many of you, this is going to be relating directly, I think, to the work you are doing or will be doing in the future. And it's certainly going to have an impact, I think, on the lives of pretty much everyone in the room in one way, shape, or form. And it's going to create growth opportunities, both for companies and for for various national economies as well. Let me start with our definition of the industrial Internet of Things. And I'm going to preface it by saying we're going to be talking more on the industrial side. I'm not going to talk a lot about refrigerators connected to the Internet. Someone already has brought that up. But we're going to be talking more about less about the consumer, but on the industrial side of the Internet of Things. And it goes by a number of names. We've heard of the Internet of Everything. Cisco's talked about that. In Germany, they refer to it as Industry 4.0. Our definition is that the industrial Internet of Things is really kind of a universe of connected and intelligent industrial products. And it is a bit like a universe because unlike earlier technologies, which certainly were connected, some ways of connecting to one another, versus private networks or networks within factories. The difference now is that any device can now be connected to the Internet and can therefore connected to one another and can be connected to platforms. So really, it goes from this directly connected to to other machines in your proximity, they're part of an industrial process, to devices and machines which can be connected almost anywhere and are able to communicate with one another and also communicate with people. The industrial Internet of Things is not just about machines to machines, it is also about machines to people. Whether it be the devices they have, which for many cases it's going to be how they will be looking at information coming out off of equipment, to wearables, embedded machines. Systems are going to be part of this as well, and intelligent plants and facilities. As well, of course, as the workforce, which will be working with all of this equipment, and the platforms that will be developed to enable all this. So this is how we are defining this. It's a very, very big universe of equipment. Why should anyone care? Well, just because it's big doesn't necessarily mean it's something that everyone should be paying attention to. We think it should be because of the growth opportunity. There have been a lot of studies and numbers thrown about on this. We dug into this very closely. We have a group of our institute. It's a team of global researchers focusing not just on technology, but also on economic growth, on economics, and on national economies and innovation. Look closely at the growth opportunity of the Internet of Things for the G20 nations. And our analysis found that the industrial Internet of Things could be worth $14.2 trillion in the G20 nations. And it's, and initially it's going to, conservatively, we feel it's going to be $10.6 trillion if conditions are improved. In other words, different countries have policies which can help them absorb and take advantage of the industrial internet. And if there's an increase in IIoT investment, that can go up another $3.6 trillion. So that's how we come with the $14.2 trillion figure. This is an enormous opportunity for growth. And the impact is going to affect both business, consumers, and the public sector. For business, it's both a growth opportunity and, of course, an opportunity for more efficient processes and new capabilities that companies will be able to have. It's going to be, they'll be able to use sensors to monitor equipment, to know where equipment is, to find ways to optimize equipment. For consumers, it's going to be more control and more for their leisure, for their health, and for everyday life. Life is, we think, can become much more convenient by taking advantage of the industrial internet, but also the equivalent will know more about consumer behavior and can come up with processes and equipment and products that will help make life easier for people. It'll also have an impact in the public sector because this is going to be used for public services, for transportation, and can lead ultimately to increased productivity and innovation. And will also lead, we feel, to faster growth ultimately as well, both through greater productivity, investments there for new market opportunities, improved quality of life, and also faster cycles of innovation. So for productivity, it means, for productivity, it's certainly going to mean optimizing supply chains and processes through sensors and analytic software. For new market opportunities, it's going to mean the chance to find new applications, new uses of this technology. And in terms of growth, I mean, just stop and think about your own organizations. This might be a good time to pause and hear what people think might be some of the opportunities for growth through the IIoT. I mean, how many people here could see opportunities to create opportunities for greater productivity?
Well, we have a wireless.
Yeah.
We have in our manufacturing line, it's obviously putting a wireless system out to communicate with machines and manage and control both from a systems control standpoint, from a quality control to production and for management. And so rather than have transducers separated from the mechanics of the wireless, I'm not sure how it would grow because it was going to be a lot less expensive to put these little devices all over.
Yeah.
And receive that information rather than have these big expensive wireless devices, and that human interaction could be optimized. Maybe that's where the growth is going to come. But I would see it as reducing the overall cost for factories to run more efficiently with spending less money on the hardware. Because these are pretty cheap. These are the little semiconductor device you put on a blade of grass and see how much water it has. So this is very powerful, but it can be very inexpensive for a factory environment.
Anyone, in terms of new market opportunities, anyone working on or see opportunities here with LoJack, for example?
I'm sure there is. I cannot tell you. It's not off the top of my head.
There's one suggestion on that. You've got a monitoring center or anything, these devices, someplace have to be monitored and tracked at some point in time. So it's a recurring revenue opportunity for someplace to that has an existing monitoring center from thing?
See, the problem is that the quality of the internet is not the same around the world, right? And many of the countries where we operate, they're
Mhm.
emerging markets, and while the cities are okay, you go outside the cities, and even within a metropolitan area, and then it's really bad. So I think it's an issue of timing
Mhm.
as well.
But don't be confused by internet, it could also be a little SMS, you don't need, you could have something, chip put in a watch, a little transducer, that if you walk up to the car with your watch, it shows if somebody tries to start the car without that chip, the alarms go off. You know, a simple little, so little close proximity kinds of things that could be very effective. That just, I'm not an expert, but from a security standpoint, that would be very powerful. And no one could steal it, nobody would know to, okay, give me your watch to go steal your car, it would maybe the heel of your shoe or something, I don't know.
That's the question.
Yeah.
In terms of new market opportunities and productivity, I think in the area that I'm active in, it's going to be mostly much smarter building controls
Mhm.
and microgrid solutions, which of course people are working on at this point in time.
Right.
A lot of work is going on. It all is going to depend on integrating it at the right kind of level and really short payback times on any kind of solution that you come up with for the present level.
I think building controls is going to be is going to be a very big area for the industrial Internet of Things. Lighting, for example, there's already digital lighting that can analyze lighting use and where people are. And it can provide an opportunity not just to improve lighting efficiency, but a lot more can be learned about how to optimally use space.
And a lot of this is going to have to be done during the design stages. I mean,
Yeah.
if you look at the opportunities right now, I recently took part in a recital. My wife is a musician, and so she was playing in Boston University, where she was doing her doctorate. And we actually, in the middle of the winter, had the windows wide open because the temperature in that room was so terrible.
Yeah.
And it was impossible to play. So with the snow outside, windows open,
Yeah.
heat full blast, we were all relatively uncomfortable. And changing that is not a problem at all.
Yeah.
It can be done at any point in time. It's a question of paying attention to it.
Yeah.
And that's going to be the big challenge. So technologically, I think these things are all solvable. It's a question of packaging it in a way that people can
Right.
actually deal with it.
So I'm on the board of a startup called Crowd Comfort, which basically is
yes.
crowdsourced building management
Right.
kind of feedback for facilities managers. And the temperature is one, maintenance is other, and they're finding
Yeah.
a lot of good traction from the building facilities managers because their legacy systems are just for their own use. There's no engagement with the actual occupants of the building. So this is a really powerful way to get that real-time feedback to
Yeah.
whether it's temperature or some maintenance issue.
Yeah, and I think when you look at that area, one of the interesting things that's going to happen is that we're going to measure and control things that we've never controlled before.
Right.
So if you look at air conditioning right now, we control only temperature. Now, it happens to be that the technology that we are working with is decibels. So
Yeah.
we dehumidify. And actually, the extent to which you feel comfortable is driven by humidity. It's not driven by temperature. So when we were at this commencement for my youngest son this Saturday,
Yeah.
and everybody in that big stadium was shivering because they need to keep the humidity down. And the only way, when you have 5,000 people in one room, the only way to do that at this point in time is making it really cold.
Right.
So
Right.
what the Internet of Things is going to allow us is first of all to notice where humidity levels are out of line with the temperature that we want to achieve. And then, of course, you need technologies that can actually do something with it, because it's great to measure, but unless you can control, you won't apply it. So it's this area where in the past we have never done things because we didn't know how to measure or because we couldn't measure,
Right.
that things will really start to change.
That's right. All this gets really to the issue of improved quality of life, right? Certainly in terms of your home and buildings and the comfort. But, and the other areas where you see opportunity for improving quality of life if we could have smarter, if we could add intelligence to our equipment and to our buildings. I mean, healthcare would certainly would be one of the areas, I would think, but yes.
You know, this is not healthcare, just going back to your comment on lighting.
Yeah.
Phillips is looking at recycling and refurbishing.
Yeah.
And with the LEDs, you have more control, you know the status of it.
Yeah.
You can track it and can reissue it, and it's sort of their drive toward improving the green aspects of their company. So that's an improvement on another look at the quality of life.
That's right, that's right.
You could also use LED lights as beacons, you know, with the coding of some of the wavelengths.
Yeah,
And then you can actually do all sorts of things with indoor positioning, if you're using them as beacons, and correlate that with the localization with personalization in some way.
mm-hmm,
You know,
right,
identity of the person or the thing.
that's right.
There's all sorts of possibilities.
That's right, that's right. I've heard of an elevator company that now has technology that can optimize the a bank of elevators. People who come in, they use their identity tag to get into the building, and from that, they would have information about what floor that person works at. And if you have a crowd of people waiting to get to the elevator, they're able to opt into the elevators. They can actually optimize the elevators so that they have elevators, send the elevators, you know, to the right banks for the people going to those particular floors.
What if that day you want to go to a different floor?
Yeah,
You're going first floor.
Take the
Yeah.
stairs.
Yeah.
Take the stairs down.
you have to have enough elevators to be able to accommodate people going to others too, but you could prioritize certainly.
So does wearables, wearable bands and that sort of thing fit in this category, this bucket as well?
Well, yes, I think it would, because that would be sensors that people would be able to have with them, and you know more about people and where they're going, what they're, whatever information you may have about them. That enables you to personalize the environment around them for what they're going to be doing. Another thing also would be innovation cycles. How would having these technologies, how might this improve and quicken the pace of innovation?
Well, you could get a tremendous amount of information how things degrade, you know, from a preventative maintenance point of view.
Mhm.
What conditions, environmental factors
Yeah.
are prevalent when something happens. And you can do a lot of big data analytics, I guess, even with machine learning, to accelerate cause and effect, and maybe even come up with suggestive remediation or changes. So that you could gather that type of information all the time,
Yeah.
and with your friendly supercomputer, be innovating while you're sleeping, basically.
No, that's right. You have the with all that data that you could create and collect and analyze, you can find new opportunities to use new ways and new needs, new information, and then you can address those needs. So you're right, that becomes part of a feedback loop of information and insight.
And, you know, one of the areas where I think this is going to really happen very quickly, it's very important for Boston, of course, education.
Yeah.
Friends of mine at Delft are now, they recently launched a massively open education program in the specific building sector.
Yeah.
That usually the professor had 100 students. This year he graduates 2,500 around the world in his particular area.
Yeah.
When you have a course like that, you can actually monitor who is using it, which part of the course are actually working, which parts are not, where you need to make improvements, how you can diversify it, for instance, towards industrial clients, et cetera, et cetera. So the whole development of educational software is going to rapidly change, I suspect, as a result of our ability to monitor constantly how people are using it.
Do you think that all these changes, all this good opportunity that you're talking about, will be slowed down by the risk of hacking?
I think I agree with you. There are impediments that are going to get in the way of the progress of the industry and other things, issues that have to be solved. Security and hacking is certainly going to be one of those areas.
Yeah, I was just at, I was talking to some people during conversations, I was at one of the biggest Internet of Things conferences in the world last week in San Francisco. And every major vendor that presented mentioned this idea and said that security and privacy to a certain extent are the fundamentals now that they are all focused on from a development standpoint, from an engineering standpoint. So this is the price of entry. It's hygiene factor, as they call it. This is the absolute starting point.
Basically, it has not been controlled. It's not under control. And every day you turn your head and you see another. Today, I mean, was it Delta that the guy went to Delta and to control the United?
Oh, yeah.
Land?
Pretty scary.
United, yeah, I think that's by Delta. Hey, it's my frequent flyer, so.
Yeah, I do think that to a certain extent, because the first wave of the Internet of Things is already being built out, there's some retrofitting going on. So it's almost, there's been this experimental period, there's been a lot of automation built in, but as we start to bring people in and some of these security issues, we're figuring out now that, security has to be job one in the next wave of development.
That's right. But with these opportunities, although everyone is aware of the security issue and other technology-related issues that have to be resolved, this is an area that's being targeted by countries around the world as a possible path to growth. So, I mean, for example, in a survey that Accenture did, many business leaders, 2/3 feel that this is an opportunity to leap for for economies in less developed countries to grow. 87% of business leaders feel that the industrial thing is going to lead to long-term job growth. And we've seen investments. The Chinese government is investing in the IIoT, $800 million by 2015. But also Britain and Germany, I think Britain is investing about $130 million into the IIoT as well. And in the United States, it's certainly seen as a pathway to growing manufacturing sector in the United States.
Except there is no freedom for the internet in China.
Well, this is one of the factors, a lot of different factors in terms of growth that are going to affect growth in different countries. And we'll get back to that later on.
I think, the technology side
Yeah.
of things is certainly limitless possibilities, but I think it was demonstrated even by our transit authority here that the bureaucratic and regulatory inertia, just to all things, a friend of mine's company specializes in light rail technology, whether it's fare collection, signalization, traffic. He said he can touch points. Attempt to do any work with them because of the bureaucratic and regulatory issues. Things are not going. So the technology is great, and I saw your reference to Europe and a few other places up there. I think a major obstacle isn't going to be technology, but the bureaucratic inertia is the
Yeah.
bigger obstacle.
No, I think that factors like that are really going to impact how much economies will grow, different economies will grow thanks to the IIoT. It's certainly one of the factors is going to be that government policy.
Right, and I think in that regard, I think this is a very critical element because I've done quite a lot of work in the Netherlands with the Dutch government working on the internet. And one of the key things they tend to do is focus on the internet for industry, which is something that governments really don't understand how to run. Actually, they're usually coming up with their own solutions. The one area where they really stay behind, and I must say, some of the Europeans are doing better, particularly in Eastern Europe, where they started to clean slate. And I think in America, it's a big disaster, is using the internet in the public sphere. The fact that I still fill out my company form on paper, and it's being put in a file over here somewhere, and nobody knows what happens to it, and if you enter your data 50 times, that's not even the Internet of Things, that's just simple automation. And they're in the 1970s in trying to move forward. So, yes, governments at a high level kind of listen, recognize the importance of these things, but actually doing something about it, that's way behind. And I think if you look at the US, we actually run a huge risk of falling behind because we're so terribly slow in these things over here when it comes to applying it to the public sector. personal needs with
Yeah.
the internet, because I agree, there are privacy things in open speech, et cetera, are a critical issue. When it's about things, and being able to control what happens to the car, what happens to the house, and what happens to, all the critical facilities, that's where we're way, way behind over here, I think. Running the risk at least to be that.
I'm just throwing up this slide. I don't want to spend too much time of it, but part of what's driving the adoption of the Internet of Things, some of the technology and the cost of the technology is there now. We've got new sensors, new technology in sensors that enables us simply to find out much more, for equipment to know much more about its environment, not just its location, but what's in the air, the soil chemistry, for example. The cost of electronics is much lower. It's dropped 30%. Electronic components dropped 30% in the last 5 years, according to Gartner. And this cost of electronics simply makes it possible to put sensors and to put connectivity in equipment at a very at low price. Internet obviously is now ubiquitous. High-speed internet is very commonplace in the developed world, and at least there's lower speed internet in many parts of the world which are still developing. The question of business and governmental understanding, people have brought up, of course, there's still a long way to go, but businesses at least are beginning to realize that there's opportunity here, and we do see some governments and development agencies which are beginning to understand this as well. Mobile market, not just the telecom sector, but also apps on cell phones. So this is basically creating lots more data that can be used that can be used in the industrial Internet of Things, as well as devices that people can use to monitor and get information from the Internet of Things. This includes, and also part of it is the world of APIs. So the APIs are ways of pushing out information from almost any device to other devices. So it makes it much easier for information and data to cross the lines from one application to another and be used. Think of data that that may be generated by the government, by mass transportation agencies or others, that can be picked up and used by any developer and then put into an application. And these IoT devices, these technologies are going to devices which are simply growing in number. You look here, just pointing out how many devices are installed or will be installed. And you can see Internet of Things devices, specifically inserted into smart equipment, is growing at a faster rate and is about to outpace PCs, smartphones, and tablets. So we're going to have more smart connected devices in the future. I'd like to go now into talking about some of the examples that we've seen of companies and industries which are beginning to put the industrial Internet of Things to work. And one of them is connected heavy equipment. Caterpillar is one company that's beginning to do this. They have a network of independent dealers, and what they've learned and what they're trying to do is create more business for their independent dealers, and they're doing it in part by putting sensors in their equipment and gathering data, analyzing the data, and then providing that data to the dealer network. So this can be used for preventative maintenance. It can be used for helping track where assets are, more details about fuel consumption. All this is information that can be provided to dealers, to customers. And these provide additional services which can then be sold as well to customers. So this is both a stream of revenue, a way to generate customer loyalty for the dealers, and for helping helping to support the success of their dealer network. We're also seeing this in the agricultural sector. With John Deere is a wonderful example of precision farming. So farming precision agriculture has been around for a while, with the first connecting GPS to tractors, so they can know exactly where they could plot exactly what they're planting in different areas. But now, in addition, they have sensors and sensor information about soil chemistry and soil moisture. They have advanced weather forecasting, and they can also begin to have information about which kind of seed is best in certain soil conditions. So now this is enabling them to plot out exactly where to plant, what to plant, and exactly where to plant down to the, practically down to the centimeter. And this is the result is increased yield per acre or hectare. And John Deere is not the only company in the agricultural sector doing it, many others are as well. Claas is a European company that also makes agricultural equipment. And what's interesting there is for Claas, is that they are developing, they're part of a network called 365 FarmNet. And what 365 FarmNet basically is just creating an open market for agricultural data. So if you have Claas equipment, you are, you can participate in, you can buy information services from this network. So you're not locked, so, and this is gonna be a growing number. It originally started with about 5 or 6 companies. I think it's now about 15 different organizations are part of the 365 FarmNet marketplace. And what you see now is creating a marketplace of data that a farmer can pick and choose from and use as they see fit. So this is a different kind of model, a new business model in a way for using data for the IIoT. We're also seeing it in the energy area as well. One of these areas, for example, would be wind farms. Siemens is a company that has been doing preventive maintenance for wind farms. Another would be also in smart pipelines with the use of sensors and pipelines combined with drones to see from above, look for any spills or any other problems that there might be. This is something that is being used by Columbia Pipeline Company. In the wind farm example, be able to get data from real time from wind farms, be able to detect deviations in the equipment from water, and then from that they can predict incidents, address causes, and do preventative maintenance. Also connected vehicles. Everyone's, of course, has heard of Google and its self-piloting, self-driven cars. But this is not going to be the only example. Another one would be the Car2Go service by Daimler. This is a new kind of car rental. So what Car2Go does is, unlike Uber or Lyft, these cars are basically placed in an urban area, parked on the street. If you want to use a car, you can find a Car2Go that's parked nearby where you are. Go to the car, unlock it, you get the code, you can unlock it with your smartphone, you can drive it to wherever you want to go, and you simply park it there and just leave it there. You can pay for the service by the kilometer or mile, or also by time. And the advantage is that the car, you don't have to wait, the car, you know where the car is and it's there in your neighborhood, you can leave it for exactly where it is, and then you pay for it in the way that's most convenient for you. And they've been putting these in, I don't know if it's in Boston, but I know it's in Austin and a lot of other cities.
We have Zipcar in this town, don't we?
Yeah.
I mean, that's a global company also. It's the same service?
It's a different service. For Zipcar, you have to go to the lot. You have to find the Zipcars and go to their lots, as I understand it. If I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong.
Like a handful of parking spots
Yeah.
all over the place.
Of lots of
No, they're
different.
not lots. There may be 2 spaces in front of an apartment building.
Okay. Okay.
All of it depends on the city's parking policy. If they make parking lots available for low cost
Right.
for these kind of cars, they tend to be spread out over the city, which is done
Yeah.
in a number of countries and not in others. The critical question here is going to be the variabilization of the cost of the car,
Yeah.
which has also been a key driver behind Uber. Can you actually make it possible to price your mileage and your availability of the car depending on the
That's
time
right.
of day and busyness of usage? If you can do that, you can really change around the whole business model.
That's right.
If you cannot, it's going to be an in-between taxi
Yeah.
and own car in terms of
Yeah.
flexibility.
Well, I think I agree with you, and I think that's true for many IoT-related businesses. In order to be able to provide this basically providing products as a service, in order to do that profitably, you really have to know your cost structure. And it's going to be different if you're a manufacturer and then you're selling You know, you're thinking about the manufacturing costs. Once it's sold, you're not worrying about costs anymore. If you continue to sell as a service, though, you have to have, the cost of maintenance and simply continuing to do business and use this equipment or rent it is going to be on you. So you have to understand these costs. Another area is going to be connected safety. This is Marathon Oil, and what Marathon Oil has done is they have given these wearable devices to the people that are working in the refineries, and these are basically chemical sensors which also has location sensing. So not only can it tell if a person's in an area where there's been a leakage or there's danger because of what's in the air, they can also know where everyone is, and they can see by following by tracking what these sensors are being picked up in the air, what is out, you know, where people are, what's being sensed, and then it makes it easier to take action. And also connected health, whether it's Fitbit, Apple Health, but these are not but with wearable devices. But there's other ways that you can approach this too. One company we've studied is a VRAD, a virtual radiologic. This is a service that began as an after-hours X-ray reading service. It then became a software-as-a-service platform. But then now it's gone into using analytics. It's now compiled a database of 250,000 images, and now it's launched a benchmarking service. So it can help hospitals and healthcare providers not just read these medical images, but can give them insight into how effectively they're using their equipment compared with other hospitals and other radiology labs. And that can give them insight into how to make better use of the equipment, more frequent use of the equipment. And ultimately, it helps both patient health and also profitability for the healthcare provider. And in the future, we're going to see intelligent products be able to do even more, because as the technology grows and develops, the equipment is going to be able to initiate tasks and communicate on its own with other equipment. Since it's already beginning to do, we're going to see more of it. We're going to see more telling the user interfaces and more recognition, making it easier and easier and more user-friendly for IoT equipment to work with individuals and people. So the equipment is going to be improved through software downloads, real time, much as you do with an update with Facebook or some other software, which is quickly where you have automatically updated. For example, Tesla is doing this with their windshield, with their dashboards. They are automatically downloading upgrades to the dashboards. And we'll see and while I'm sure companies will have to be judicious in when they can do it and when not to do it, certainly, this is something that this will be an option that they'll be able to do. We'll see companies, as they use this data more and more, they're going to figure out better ways to lower their operating costs, optimize yield and productivity, and also, prevent failures in the future with the equipment failure, as well as helping to take action. So a lot more we're going to be seeing in terms of the capability of this equipment. We began talking, now that we kind of run through this, some of the possibilities, we're talking about lighting and other ways of using it at home. I'm just wondering if people have any further thoughts about, how this might be used in the use at home of this kind of technology. Some of the ways that I thought about were, we thought about were certainly energy savings, greater convenience, thinking of like kind of cars to go, more comfort. The example of we were talking about earlier, certainly with that. With AC.
The energy.
That's right. Say time saving, reduce cost of living, and I think all the above might apply. But which of these, I'm just curious, which of these do people feel are going to be the greatest opportunity short term for the IIoT?
Energy and comfort are more tied together. I've spoken to some folks who use a lot of companies doing this already.
Yeah.
Then we talk to people like electrical contractors who might be, in the end, going to be installing this equipment. What the view is that the cost in the existing home of making it an intelligent home, it currently is just cost prohibitive. Building a new home, you do all this stuff with very little additional cost relatively. But the existing housing stock, to make a home residential fit is staggering proposition.
It's gotta be
for most
comfortable.
homeowners.
You might, it's not a saving thing either, it's a
It's
comfort.
comfort.
You really want that, and so you wanna pay for it.
Yeah, there's I attended a local IoT meetup. Basically, a group of people interested in the topic would get together informally, and they had an entrepreneur from a company that was interested in inventing in home vents. The problem that they were trying to solve is every house has a room that's always too hot or too cold. And if they could combine, if they put sensors in the vents, and also around the house, they would be able to figure out what's causing that room to be cold and make adjustments in airflow. But the interesting thing is, of course, they're discovering along the way that people really don't understand why rooms are hot or cold. You could think it's because you've got a draft that's coming from someplace, but what's really called, but it may not be that draft, it may be something else. You may find out that that certain window is broken that you weren't aware of, or leaking, or some other problem. The opportunity is not just that they'll be able to charge, charge people to be able to identify and make adjustments with vents that they can automatically be adjusted. It's all that information data they're gonna have about houses that they'll now have, that they can use and they can provide to a Home Depot or a Lowe's or to a manufacturer to help them better understand where the opportunities are. And it ain't just something to identify where in the home something's not working properly, and then to help, and then there's opportunities to get things fixed.
The big challenge there is that when you start automating these things, it influences directly the behavior of people living in the home.
Yes.
And understanding that interface is something that is very limited at this point in time. So, for example, when you're looking at homes right now, and offices, by the way, they're made much more efficient.
Yeah.
And what we see is that people, for all kinds of reasons, start to interact with that, and often not in a way that is being expected. So they started to open doors more, they open windows in the middle of the day, and managing in ways that we did not expect. And
Yeah.
that's where things like cloud conference come in. We really need to get a much more direct feedback system between the individuals using the space and the machines. If it's just machines talking to each other, it's never going to work.
Yeah, most units designed for the home are designed as standalone units.
Right.
So it's a light system that you can control from your mobile phone, or a lock system that you can control just before you enter the home, or a heating system that observes your behavior. And these are standalone devices.
Right.
But people wonder, I just automated my home, why is it that when I come up my driveway and digitally unlock my doors, why the front door, why the lights don't come on, and why doesn't Nest adjust the temperature in the home? Because that's how we think. And most home automation systems are kind of missing this user experience part of it right now.
I would like to I have a little Toyota, an electric one, and totally automated heating and cooling system. Works perfectly. When I am in there, I just push in Odo, I set it on the right temperature, and within about 5 minutes, you have the temperature that you want. When my wife drives in that car, she immediately adjusts, takes it off the Odo, will put it on high speed, because the only way to cool down is if you hear the noise of the fan. Without hearing the noise of the fan, she does not believe the car is cooling. Now, of course, at that point in time, you're not cooling, you're actually sending in the hot air. That's counterproductive. But people react in ways that are totally unexpected. And unless you know how people actually are feeling about that, yes, you can automate it, you can turn on the lights, but people will not like it and will start interfering in a way that we don't expect.
It's true, in the car industry, I used to work for General Motors, we had, for electrical cars, we had to pour special noise in the engine, because the engines don't make noise.
Mm.
People didn't know the car was running off, so we had to create artificially a
Noise
noise.
for the car.
Yeah.
for the car.
There's a communication piece there.
Yeah.
It's same, my wife's BMW, the oil light comes on, and, you know, it's all right, we get some oil in the garage, I'll go put a quart of oil in on, but of course, we all were brought up, right before you do that, you pull the dipstick to figure out, there's no dipstick. So I'm out in the garage, looking all around this damn thing. I'd love to check the oil, but no dipstick. I'm scratching my head, pulling out, well, what happens is when the oil light comes on, it means you need 1 quart. But if you don't know that, you
Not
rip
too
your
long.
hair out.
Yeah.
Right, so I had to pull out. Well, minimum means you need to, but the light,
Yeah.
it should say, add 1 quart, all you get is a little picture. It's a little irritating exercise to go through.
Yeah.
So communication, I think, of what the issue is, or probably need to improve it a lot, so even idiots like myself can figure out what's going on.
Yeah. So we talked about, you know, what the IoT can do for companies. Let's talk a bit about economies right now. And the impact. We provide some rather large figures earlier. 10.3 trillion, another 3.7 if the conditions are right and countries and lawmakers pass make the right investments and the right support. Our economics team in London looked at the national economic impact of the IoT. And what we found is that without the right conditions, the impact can vary quite a bit. Countries may not be able to get the benefits of the IoT. An analogy really is electrification. At the beginning of the era of industrial electrification, everyone starts at the same spot. By 1942, the United States was far ahead per capita of other countries, and then in the era of consumer electrification, really after the war, World War II, you can see the enormous disparity. So the question is, why is it the United States electrification really took off in terms of output compared to other countries? And it really was that the United States had really all the right conditions. It had the conditions of investment, of a national economy. It had companies that were willing to take further steps, and as a result, it really grew much faster in the U.S. than elsewhere.
Sorry, Alan,
Yes.
do you think that's still applicable today? I mean, what you did there was you looked at obviously the past, what was that?
Yeah.
80 years, right? So what happened in the past 80 years to justify where we are today?
Yeah.
Do you think looking at the developing countries today, it's the same analysis, or because of the way things are changing, it's going to be a different dynamic and a different driver?
Well, there will be some different drivers, but we think that there's a comparable dynamic in terms of absorptive capacity. And when our team put together what they call a National Absorptive Capacity Index to assess the economic diffusion of the IoT. And it looked really at 4 different areas. So one was what they call the business commons. And this is a matter of having a workforce, an educated workforce available, the rule of law and of intellectual property protection, a reliable financial system, good governance. So these are basically factors that create a good environment for business. We also have takeoff factors, which are dealing with how rapidly the IoT technology is being scaled and spread across wider society. This has to do with consumer willingness to take advantage of these technologies and these kinds of products. Also the state of the consumer economy. Transfer factors would be more also about how companies and consumers are embracing these technologies as well. The innovation dynamo is really the ability of companies and venture capitalists to invest and continue working in this area. And what we found was that the countries that had the highest score in the index was the United States, and Switzerland, several Scandinavian countries, and then following, you can see Netherlands, Denmark, United Kingdom, and then far to the right, Russia, India, Italy, Brazil. It doesn't mean that these countries won't be able to get economic benefits from the industrial Internet of Things, but that the ability of these countries will be greater than those on the far right.
I'm not going to remember the author of a book a few years ago last year that I read, and it was a study over 2,000 years, and yet, and today at the same time. But there's one factor that isn't really financial, and really isn't technology, that makes the United States stand out among all the others, and that's freedom. Freedom of people to make choices, the freedom of people to take risk. And that was the driving force of what this author, was an economist.
Yeah.
That made the United States stand out from all the others. So we can talk about the technology and other things. The underlying culture of freedom, as long as governments stay out of the way and people preserve their freedoms, the United States should stay still ahead of others unless they're willing to give up their freedom.
Well, those freedoms you're referring to are really going to be part of that commons of government practice and law and international property protection, as well as
Individuals' willingness
yeah.
to respect and preserve their freedoms,
Yeah.
to have those choices. They're willing to give up their freedoms in exchange for some comfort. The United States competitive advantage of the same.
If we looked also, here's some breakouts by different countries as well. So, which shows the cumulative GDP impact of the IoT. And, the United States, Germany particularly with very, very strong investment in manufacturing, and the investments it's continuing to make. In China, it's certainly a much bigger disparity. A variety of reasons, including, but also including certainly infrastructure as well. So how can countries win? There are 5 ways we suggest. One is to play to the country's strength. Make investments that work with the strengths of the economy rather than against it. Invest where you're already strong and already have advantage. Number 2 is really focus on building up ecosystems. In order for the IoT to work, you need a lot of cooperation and a lot of data sharing, a lot of cooperation. Almost no company on its own is going to have everything it needs to be able to succeed in the IoT. The partnerships are going to be very, very important. Combat resource deficiencies. You're going to have to make decisions about where to make, where to buy, and where to focus in terms of building up your capabilities for the IoT. Collaboration is going to be very important. Industry, academia, NGOs, organizations like the Mass High-Tech Council also is going to be a way to make these connections. And also invest in experiments, promote pilots, promote demonstration projects, get your hands dirty, basically. And for businesses, the IoT, just going back to an earlier thing, we talked about where the growth opportunities are. There are three opportunities. One is going to be the operational efficiencies, which referred to several times. But on the revenue side, there's both incremental revenues from adding to the services you already have with new capabilities, but also it's going to be the unconventional growth, new ways of doing business. Will be is where I think the various opportunities lie. On the operational efficiency side, for example, it's going to be things like the opportunity to know where your assets are, the global asset visibility, by having devices which can be easily located. Optimizing your operations to reduce your energy costs, reduce maintenance and repair costs. The ability to automate repetitive processes and tasks. On the incremental revenue side, it's going to be creating new customer experiences and new applications, which allow an industrial company or a manufacturer to have on an ongoing basis, have connections with its customers. If you are a product company, in the past, you sell the product and then except for when it's serviced, you don't have much contact. If you're providing services, however, you have an ongoing, every day you have the opportunity to have a customer touch point and for the customer to connect with you. And it can include things like a Tesla dashboard, or it can include information services. The data that you can accumulate through analytics can itself be a kind of a service that you could sell to provide to companies and to your customers. And again, maintenance is going to be very important, where you can boost productivity through new kinds of predictive maintenance services. But it's going to be the unconventional revenues we think is going to be the biggest opportunity. There's going to be new business models here. Products can now be created, provided as services, like Daimler's Car2Go. One of the areas of research I'm doing now is what we call the outcome economy. In the future, as you're able to know more about, you have much more information about the products, about services, about how they're used, you're going to be able, and you have more information about the cost, you're going to be able to begin to provide not just a product or a service, or even a solution which fixes a problem, but you're going to be able to provide an outcome, maybe even a guaranteed outcome, where you can go to a customer and say, we will be able to decrease your cost by a certain percentage, or we're going to be able to deliver on a certain set of KPIs, so that you're going to have a certain value that you get out of using our service. Another way to compete might be by becoming the most valuable information provider, where you're providing the most, you have more information that you're gathering, providing your customer can be so important to their business that they are going to be orienting their vendor selection around making sure they can continue to get that information from you. Perhaps even that information may be more important than the actual product itself. There will be new products and services coming down. People in the past, we talked about the generation of the millennials and internet native generation of people, young people. In the future, we're going to be creating a new generation of internet native products. And a lot of those products are going to be, figuring out what those are going to be in part done through services. You're going to be you can do your R&D by trying out new services, by providing more information, and seeing and making adjustments, seeing what services people want, seeing what information people want, seeing what user interfaces people want. And then in the future, you can use that information to design new products along with that data. Finally, it's going to be product as a service, where, and this is again that class example and the 365 FarmNet, where the product becomes a platform for providing and selling new kinds of information services. And that could be services that you create and provide, or services that are offered through partners. And finally, how to get started. 10 steps. First of all, begin by thinking both about growth and also with efficiency. So pursue a balanced strategy that focuses on both. Products are going to become hybrids of products and services. And think about the value of these product service hybrids, where the product is also providing information and new capability that comes in as a service. Think about your ecosystem. You're going to need a new ecosystem of partners to be able to produce and compete in this world. Today's partners may not be the right partners for the future. Begin developing that ecosystem. Think too about your platform, that industrial internet platform of how all these products and services are going to be able to be connected together. This is the technology side. Treat services as R&D for future products. This is going to be a way of testing new ideas and new things that people will want. Look closely into the cost. Dig deep into the cost and the ROI of providing industrial internet services. because in order to provide these services, probably really have to understand the cost structure, and the costs will be different than they were when you're selling just products alone. You're gonna have to think about sales channels, about marketing and service in order to promote these new services. A sales force that's used to selling products is now gonna be switching to selling services too. It's gonna be a different world for many of them, and with new questions about how they're compensated, about what to emphasize when they sell. Certainly also understand the local regulations regarding the legal rights of data and software, taxation and accounting. There can be a lot of questions about where is the data going to be stored, what's going to be the rights and the privacy, how is it going to be taxed? For example, if you're operating in China, VAT taxes VAT is very different for selling products than for selling services. Services is much lower rate. So suddenly you're a product company, but now you're selling it as a service. In China, it might appear that you are really trying to dodge taxes if the VAT tax rate's that much lower. Something you've got to look into is the taxation impact. You need a workforce. If you are creating basically a new set of services along with the products, you need a workforce that's going to be able to fill that industrial internet service sector. People who are going to be developing the services, the technology, people who are going to be creating the service, people who are going to be able to test these hardware and software hybrids, people who can market that. And you have to also think about augmentation, these machines with these smart machines with your workforce. One of the things where everyone is interested in is the future is what's going to be the impact on jobs, job growth and creation, and whether jobs are going to be automated out of existence. We think a big part of it, though, instead, is that you can see augmentation, where people can be using smart equipment, working together with robots and other smart equipment. And you have to start thinking about how people are going to be learning to work together with smart equipment. If you have more questions, Accenture's been publishing our group, the Institute for High Performance, along with other groups Accenture has been publishing a great deal on industrial Internet of Things. If you go to this website, you'll be able to see our reports. They include a report which I co-authored with Accenture Technology Labs on unconventional growth. Reports that we did for the World Economic Forum on the industrial Internet of Things and other work as well. So thank you very much.